Guys, it's Sam here, and Andoni Iraola is officially the Liverpool manager. The new Liverpool manager, should I say. He has signed a 2-year contract, and it's the same as his Bournemouth contracts. And yeah, it's official. He is the manager. And yeah, like, I just wanted to come on and speak about it a little bit. Because, well, I've been doing the videos lately just of Liverpool at the minute. I've not made a gaming video in, I think, 2 weeks now. I do apologise for that. But a lot has been going on in the last 2 weeks surrounding Liverpool. So, I just had to make these videos. So, yeah. Iraola is the new Liverpool manager, and as I said in the video about the sacking of Arne Slot when he was the front runner, I said that I didn't mind it, and that it was, you know, I'm on board. Like, I think he's done a great job at Bournemouth, and I think he deserved this opportunity. Now, however, I did mention that I was a little bit concerned, or slight concerned, about if it's going to be similar to Brendan Rodgers, where the expectations of being at a smaller club and then a big jump to Liverpool, it kind of doesn't, you know, it doesn't fit, and he doesn't succeed. Now, there's a difference between I think the managers especially, but also there's a difference in the squads that are there, you know. Firstly, I think Brendan Rodgers, when he kept Swansea up, I believe they were near the bottom still, but you know that they were safe, but you know they were nearer the bottom. Since Iraola came in at Bournemouth, you know, they haven't really been anywhere near the bottom. They've been in and around the top half of the bottom table, and I believe maybe got into 10th or 9th, I think, last season, and then have gone on to get 6th in European football, 3 points off Champions League football. And if Villa had finished 5th, they would have got Champions League football anyway. I don't think Rodgers was anywhere near that with Swansea. So already there is a difference. But then you look at the squads that that the managers are coming into. Like, for instance, the 2012-13 squad that Rodgers came into, it wasn't amazing, you know. It was still, I think we knew, although we'd won the League Cup and got to an FA Cup final, we knew that the squad needed work. We knew the squad had a couple of individual brilliant players, but overall wasn't amazing, you know. We knew Gerrard was getting on. We knew that, you know, there was still question marks about Andy Carroll. We knew we had a great player in Suarez, but, you know, it was how do you combine that brilliance with other players around him. There were question marks still on, you know, Downing and Charlie Adam and, you know, the players that had joined a a year previous. So, you know, it wasn't like it is now. I think, yes, there are similarities. Of course, there are question marks over the new signings still, and whether they are the right fit and whether they can adapt to the squad. The difference is, the players that we're talking about in this squad now are so much more talented than the players from the previous. And it's not a dig at them, you know, it's not, it's just a fact, you know. Florian Wirtz easily trumps any of the players that were signed in that summer by Kenny Dalglish. You know, he's miles better than Downing, he's miles better than Charlie Adam, any of the others. You know, it is just a fact. So, when you have quality players like Wirtz, and you've got Isak, who will have a proper, you know, pre-season, hopefully, touch wood, he doesn't get injured at the World Cup, he will have a proper pre-season. So that is the main thing with him as well. He will be fit and ready. You've got Kirkes, who will now, you know, he's had pretty much the spell of being first choice last season. He doesn't have Andy Robertson to push him now, but he's learnt from him, and after a year you would hope also that he will settle in more and show more quality. And the fact that he's having the manager that brought something out of him at Bournemouth, that obviously Liverpool saw, that wanted them to sign him, you know, you're thinking there that, you know, he could probably get the best out of him. You've got Frimpong, who has had a really difficult first season with injuries. You know, he's going to be desperate to prove himself to this new manager, and prove himself to the fan base as well, that he can be relied on. Because, you know, we have been through these injury-riddled players before, and it's difficult to, you know, trust them to stay fit, especially when you really, really need them. Daniel Sturridge was a big one. You know, Daniel Sturridge was, when he was fit, he was world class. I will put it out there. Some people might disagree, but I think when you look at his goal record, especially at Liverpool, some of the goals he scored as well, he was a world class player on his day. But the big hindrance was you could not rely on him. You just couldn't rely on him. You know, he was too injury prone. You knew that he was going to get injured at some point, and it was a very, very difficult. It was difficult. And so you have to really prove that this wasn't a precursor to what we might see in the future. But yeah, anyway, it's a really good appointment for me. I think a lot of people's dreams was obviously Enrique, but you know, I think he is happy in Paris, he's settled in Paris, and you know, he has built a squad that has gone back to back in the Champions League. You know, not many clubs have done that in the entirety of the European Cup's history. You know, it's a rare trait to have. You know, he's in a unique place, and why not, you know, build on that? Why not try and go for equaling Real Madrid's treble, maybe even beating Real Madrid's treble and going 4 years in a row? You know, these are the things that will appeal to him. And of course, you know, the opportunity to manage in the Premier League appeals, I think, to every manager. But that's not to say that the opportunity isn't still going to be there after his PSG term, you know? So, I think that was all just a massive, massive dream. But the realism was, I think, Iraola. You know, there's a reason there are front runners for a reason. And 9 times out of 10, the front runners do end up getting the job. Unless they personally reject the job. But, you know, with Iraola not, you know, no longer being Bournemouth manager, being free to discuss, you know, without having to talk to the club first and get permission to speak to a new club, he was able to do it freely, and he weighed up his options, and then Liverpool sacked the manager, come in for him, and he goes, yeah, you know, this is the one that I want. So, for me, it's just about getting behind him. You know, like we always do, like we always have whenever a new manager's come in. We always give them time, we always get behind them, we always back them. The big thing will be to see how we set up. You know, he's said the right things already, you know, that he wants to be part of us, he wants to prove himself at this level. The big thing will be, will he back that up? You know, and in order to do that, he has to get us back playing attacking football. You know, it's not this slow build-up that Arne Slot wanted. It has to be attacking. It has to be exciting. He has to excite the fan base. Because that was the big issue with Slot this season. You know, yes, a lot of the results weren't great. Yes, we lost, I think, 12 games this season, just in the Premier League alone, which is an embarrassment for a top 6 club. You shouldn't be losing that many games. But the biggest problem we had was the football. And I think a lot of those results also came from the poor football. Because the fan base weren't as loud, especially at Anfield. The fan base wasn't loud, it was groaning every time the ball went backwards or sideways. You could feel the fans getting agitated, they weren't happy. That clearly transcends to the players as well. They become nervous, and all of a sudden you've got, you know, a very, very difficult moment, because the nerves from the fans and the nerves from the players feeds off the opposition, and they go, we've got them exactly where we want them. Let's keep doing this, and we can snap at them now because they're really, really not happy. So, if he gets the fans on side very, very early on and shows early on that he can play this free-flowing, attacking football, getting Wirtz in the way that he plays for Germany, being very creative, being free, being able to express himself, getting Kirkes and Frimpong to bring some more out of them, yeah, I think there's a chance that this could be very, very successful. Now, the problem is now, I think, where do we how come on, what's the word I'm looking for? What are our expectations? So, because when Klopp left and Slot came in, no one thought we'd win the league. You know, no one thought we would win the league at all. It was, can we secure a Champions League spot? We've basically gone flip-flopped seasons under Slot, where the first season should have been this season, and this season should have been the first season. So what do we feel is acceptable for Iraola's first season? You know, is it Champions League qualification, or are we now saying, even though it's your first season, you've got to deliver now? There will be fans that expect, I mean, we all expect, should I say, to be challenging for trophies. That's a given. But again, we've lost some really key players. We're going to have to add quite a few players like last summer. It's going to be another, you know, few months of they have to gel, they have to know each other, they have to work together. You know, is it a case of, let's just see, can we, at least for the first few months, let's just see the style of play. Can we identify the identity of Liverpool? Because under Slot we couldn't. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know the plan. We couldn't see the vision. Can we see the vision? Can we sit watching Liverpool, being excited again and going, we know exactly what Iraola's trying to do. We know, the players know what he wants them to do. You know, that's the big thing. And I think for a large part of this, the first few months will be crucial. It's how are we adapting to this new manager? How are we seeing noticeable changes, or is this too similar? Those first few months will be massive. And then it's about, I think, can we maybe push in the Champions League? Can we push in a title race? Can we actually make things exciting again? And we see what happens. I think that the first season will be a little bit like that. I think, you know, we give managers time. So, no doubt, I'm sure he will get the 2 years, unless it goes absolutely disastrously wrong in the first few months. But I'm confident. I am confident. I think the way he speaks, the way he played with Bournemouth, the fact that he's got more talented players than he had at Bournemouth, I feel like this could be really, really good. And I am confident. But there's still that issue of like, is this another Rodgers, or is this going to be a really, really successful time? And of course, it's a short 2-year deal. It's, you know, you're obviously proving yourself, and that's what he wants. You know, we heard him say it in when he'd signed 2-year contracts at Bournemouth, that he was asking for those because you have to prove that you belong there. You're not just there because you're contracted. So I get it. I think it's a really, really smart move and a really good move for him to do. It's just, you know, with it being short term, again, are we going to see him, you know, embrace the Liverpool culture? Or is this, well, 2 years, you know, I'll enjoy the 2 years and then, you know, move on. I think right now we need stability again. We need a manager that is going to be stable, that is going to drive us to continue to be successful. And I believe Iraola is that man. I'm going to back him 100%. I hope the club does exceptionally in the transfer market to back him and give him the best possible start. And we just see where it goes. And, you know, hopefully we're back to the free-flowing attacking football that we love. And yeah, we'll see what happens. But Andoni Iraola is a new Liverpool manager. And I, for one, cannot wait for the season. So, thanks so much. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.